All right, we're back. We are MAPD714. That's iOS development in the fall 2017 semester. And we are week 5, actually, this week. We're talking about multi-view apps. I'm following the PowerPoint just like we normally do from the book. Now, just to note, the PowerPoint slides I put together from the book. So it kind of follows pretty much the same thing. We also talk about other things. That's why I'm here. Let's kick off Xcode for a second. So again, as I said to some of you, I had this catastrophic failure this week. This is great, where my machine stopped working. That was really great, right? And so unfortunately, I am at the latest version of macOS High Sierra. Wasn't my plan. Just like it was my plan to go to Xcode 9. What was that? Should we all upgrade? Well, I had some problems, and I got to talk about the problems before I go here. One of the problems I had, which again I want to talk about, is for people who have Macs of their own, you should get yourself a little backup drive, right? I know this is extra money, but if you can afford, if your Mac has a 512 gig or 256 gig hard drive, it's not that expensive to get another 256 gig external hard drive. I recommend it, or 512 gig drive. It does not have to be super fast. It doesn't have to be, some kind of Thunderbolt drive or something crazy. It doesn't have to be SSD. It could be any drive to back yourself up that's reliable and new. There's some really good deals at Costco and other places. Even Best Buy has some really good deals for backup drives. And back up your machine. So notice on the top, you have this idea of Time Machine. If I go into my system preferences and I can look at Time Machine, right? Time Machine has, you can see my last backup was October 1st. And you can see that, what you can do is you can set Time Machine to work while you're sleeping, right? So you put it on, it records all your stuff and puts it on a backup. And then worst case scenario, if your journey to Mac OS High Sierra fails, you can always restore, right? Because, and you're going to say, well, okay, what's worst case scenario, Tom? I can always take it to the Apple Store and they can do it for me. And yeah, you could. That's the other part. The one thing you could do with Mac, they'll totally take care of you, especially within the first year. They'll, you go to them, they'll restore your system and everything else. But you'll be out for a day, right? They're going to take your machine and it's gone for a day, right? So that's a problem. The great thing about this is if you have enough space, then notice that hourly backups, it'll do hourly backups as long as you're connected to the system. It'll keep on backing up any changes you make to your drive, and I believe it's a really good thing. I've had a few instances where I've had to back up my machine from this, right, from this state, and it's been really good. Like the backup is like literally within an hour, I'm back. It doesn't take long, right? And it's not like Windows. If you back up your system on Windows, you're looking at 4 hours of downtime, right? Because by the time you get your backup going and restore your files, in a worst case scenario where you blew away your operating system, it's like 3 or 4 hours before you're back. Not so with Mac. You're pretty good most of the time. Now, for me, I have this terrible instance where I got this, folder with a question mark. Let me just show you what it looks like. It looks like folder question mark Mac. Okay, it looks like this, right? And it flashes on your screen, right? You know what that means? It means your system is dead. Your operating system is gone, and you have you can't start your machine, right? So you need to restore from factory settings. Now, if you have your machine, you can always go into restore mode, and if you look it up, it'll give you instructions. Apple has some really good documentation about getting into restore mode when you restart your machine. There's a button you press. I think it's R. Or Option R, power button, and then I think you press Command or Option R or something, and then it comes up with another install that comes up, and then you can reinstall your system. It's not that difficult. So if you're experiencing that little icon that looks like this, you can restore from it. But when I got it, even when I did the restore, it didn't work. So you can imagine how you feel fear when you've got your system's files work you've done, like the little model I did, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna lose my work. I thought maybe my hard drive was dead. You know, bad things can happen, right? Luckily, I had a backup, and the backup helped me restore stuff. But I highly recommend that you do a backup before you upgrade, and that's the long answer for you. So if you're going to upgrade to macOS High Sierra, back up your files. For people who are doing the VM, may not work. I'm just saying, may not work, right? Hopefully it does. Hopefully you have no problem. You can still work on the VM, although it's not recommended. But you know, you might run into a problem. So if you're going to do it, if the people who just bought their Mac want to upgrade your Mac, okay. But I would recommend doing a backup first, going through Time Machine, and then you're ready. And then you're ready. Worst case scenario, you can always go back to what you had an hour ago after you did your backup, you know. But if you didn't do a backup and you did some work, you did your Pizza app, and now it's gone, right? That would be a very bad situation, right? So don't do that unless you really have to. Okay, so that's what happened to me. So unfortunately, that happened to me. So I'm at macOS High Sierra. What did it do? Well, if I look at things like Git, sometimes what happens is it replaces versions of Git. Now they didn't do it for me this time. It stops certain things from happening on the command line. It resets things like Xcode. You have to download additional documents and stuff like this, and it does a bunch of resetting. What did I gain from it? Nothing. I'm not going to talk highly about macOS High Sierra because on the front end, I don't see that there's a lot of improvements that I can see on the front side, right? When I look at it for me, myself. Photos app, if you're really a photographer or an art person, the Photos app's really improved. The back end is changed. The operating system changed its file system and a bunch of other minor changes. But here's what happened to me. Office stopped working. Adobe stopped working. Blender stopped working. I had to reinstall all those things after I upgraded, right? So that's a real issue for me, right? That's downtime. That's like hours and hours of downtime. And I don't recommend it unless you really have to. So hold off. How about Xcode 9? Should you upgrade to Xcode 9? You don't have to right now. I don't think it's necessary. You can probably get along without it, right? To be honest with you, there's not a lot of changes except for Swift 4 and Swift 3.4 to get you to Swift 4, right? In terms of that, there's some extra minor things that allow you to refactor and so on that you can't do in Xcode 8. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's a lot of reason right now until December. I would say between semesters, there's less risk. You don't have projects on the go, nothing that's ongoing. Worst case scenario, you're down for a week. It's okay, right? Hey, if we have the other thing I was talking about earlier, that's a great time to do it, right? Because you get like 3 weeks to do that, right? Which I'm not going to mention what that thing is. You know what I talked about, right? All right, so let's get back into Xcode. If I'm going to do a new Xcode project, and notice that just to put some stuff up with you guys again, if I'm going to develop a new single view application, that's just one option. I could also code an Xcode app. Let's say, for example, if I want to do a Mac OS app, I could do a command line tool as well. Like I can just click on command line tool with Mac OS, and then kind of come up with an app based on C++. And if you notice, I'm just going to show you this. Don't do it yet with me. I'll show you. So if I want to make a command line tool, right? So if I click next, and this is a Mac OS app, notice that I can also code in C++ and C, right? So Xcode is not just for Swift and Objective-C, but also for other languages. It's great for it's a really nice C++ app, visual, like kind of like Visual Studio, right? Now we're not doing this. I'm just going to go back to previous. We're not doing this. We're doing iOS, and we're using a single view application to create a multi-view app. Notice there's also this other stuff, master detail app we're going to get to. There's also other kinds of apps that we're going to hit later on. Hopefully next semester, I'm going to try and do an augmented reality app with you guys, right? And see how that goes. There's other kinds of apps, and these are just templates for you to start off a little quicker. That's all it is. And that's your Metal. Remember I talked about Metal? There's your metal library. There's a game. This is Sprite Kit. This is your metal library with, if you can access that. You can also do Scene Kit, right? There's different kinds of games you can make, right? And it's right here on the template selector. Let's go to single view application. Next. All right, so we're going to call this multi-app. I'm going to call it MAPD fall 2017 MultiView app, right? That's what it is. I'm not going to select my team. I'm going to keep it to Swift. Again, I have Swift or Objective-C as an option. I'm not going to choose anything else. We're going to do some unit tests later on, not today, but we will hit unit tests. In this course, we will talk about them because I want to make sure you guys know how to do them. Next, I'm going to put it in my regular spot. I'm going to attach it to Git, just like normal, and create. All right, so highlights of the PowerPoint to get you guys going. One thing they talk about here in the book, which I think is pretty good, they talk about the need for having multiple screens. I mean, we've been doing single screen applications right now. And let's face it, there's a lot of applications out there that do multiple screens. Called on the Android side. How do I do, what do I call, what's the analog on Android? What do I do in Android to get multiple screens? What's it called? An activity, right? And how do I get to that activity? I have an intent, yeah? So I have this intent, it catapults me into the activity, and then I might have, if I want to, some kind of transition if I want, right? And that all happens very simple, right? There's no storyboard. It's literally just add another activity, and you can have multiple activities. And Android, and it'll follow whatever hierarchy you like. Not so in iOS. We have some totally different ways of doing things. And that's why we're going to go through this. So a lot of them offer second views, like, for example, some other view. And what I wanted to do today is get you guys, building out your calculator app with an option view. I'm not going to do that today because we have other things going on. But the idea that we're going to have today is this idea of this view switcher app. We have a view switcher app, and what we're going to do here is we're going to have this toolbar at the bottom, right? And what it's going to do is we're going to switch from one view to the other. Okay. So you can see that we're going to have a yellow view, we're going to have a blue view, right? Just something similar to what we did last week with the different buttons, where we talked about this, and this is all part of what we need to build up. We're building up your skills so that you can do something more complex, right? Because so far, I mean, I can get you to do some other kind of simple user interface, but you need a back end. Does your Pizza app have a back end? No, right? It's just front end stuff. You're learning how to make a front end pizza app, right? So that's what we're gonna have. We have this. I'm not gonna give you a pizza app, I swear. We'll do something else. But that's what we're building here. And there's also going to be this little message that pops up when you click on the big button. And it'll ask you, hey, you press the big button. And then this would be the same way as going back. You can actually tell it to go back, but that's all this button is going to do, right? Very simple. All right, so really the storyboard in iOS and Xcode, if you notice, there's this main storyboard thing. And I talked about this briefly. It has this big fat arrow, right? Well, guess what? This big fat arrow can move, right? You can actually click on it and move it around, right? Right now, we only have one view controller. Now, yours might look slightly different than mine because I have Xcode 9, and most of you, especially the ones that are using the system in front of you, have Xcode 8, okay? So it might look slightly different, and I do apologize for this change. I talked about it already, but let me just make the view a little bigger. So that's kind of a screen, right? That's where all my screens are. And what I can do is I can add more of these in my storyboard to create a linked kind of hierarchy, right? And notice that all I have here is my view controller scene. That's this whole thing, right? I can rename this if I want to. This is just a name that's right out of the box when I start my single view application, right? I just have this one screen. And there's other buttons up here that do different things, right? So if I hover over this, you can see that this is the view controller. I've got this first responder, which we kind of talked about already, right? And also exit. What happens when I exit the app? these three little buttons do things, right? And we'll talk about those, right? And that's built into every view controller. You also have the view, which is the main container, just a review of what we have, right? As well as what's called in Xcode 9 and iOS 11, the safe area, which is something you may not have on your Xcode, right? Because yours may not include the safe area. It's like a subview. That's what it is in Xcode 9 that allows you to kind of hit the constraints of the box. By the way, for people who have anyone actually look at the new phones, I know I talked about briefly about the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 10 last week. I kind of talked about it with you guys, and we saw examples of that when we did our app, which kind of was terrible. Didn't work quite like what we wanted it to do. Really, iPhone 8, I think, is worth it. I think if you're going to go for, if you had no phone and you're going to get a brand new phone, iPhone 8's okay, right? But if you have an iPhone 6 already, right, there's no real reason to upgrade at this point. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because it's kind of got a lot of the features of iPhone 6, right, and iPhone 7. Very similar to that. It's, water resistant and all this kind of stuff. It's got all the features. The main upgrades to it is the A11 Bionic chip, which gives you ARKit. Works well with that phone. I think if you're going to do kind of augmented reality apps, then you're going to gear it for something like iPhone 8. And the other thing, it has face recognition, which is kind of a new thing. I think we're going to play with that a lot over the next little while. You're going to see more face apps. Like, for example, they talked about Instagram, how they can layer masks on people's faces and all that kind of stuff. They did that on the iPhone X, but it can also work on iPhone 8 eventually as well, those kind of things. So that's really the gist. iPhone X or iPhone 10, which is what it's called, has more camera features and other things like that. It's a much faster phone in different ways. One of them has more to do with facial recognition. There's more stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's an evolution as opposed to a revolution, right? It's not a revolutionary product. It's an evolutionary step. Could have expected from iPhone 6 2 years ago. That's my opinion, right? If we had this stuff in iPhone 6, back when iPhone 6 came out, then everyone would have been like, holy crap, wow, right? Because Android wasn't there, but Android's there now. Android's already there. They have NFC. They have everything that really iPhone 8 has. So, and I'm just being an impartial bystander here. I'm not telling you I don't love the cult of Mac, right? I'm a cultist of the cult of Mac, right? I believe I have everything. I have my MacBook. I have my, the only thing I don't have is a watch. Getting that. But, like I believe in Apple products. It's just that I'm not sure if it's an evolutionary step. So we saw problems with that when it came to this. And notice on the bottom here, in my Xcode 9, I can only choose iPhone 8 and iPhone X. Those are the two options that I have. And that's the standard phone. Usually they only produce the standard phone down here, but they're compatible with iPhone 7 and iPhone 6. All right, so that's the difference. Okay. So again, really what we have is this idea of the root controller, okay? And so again, we have the storyboard, and we have this idea of the root controller. And we have this, the root controller is an instance, like it says here, of UI navigation controller or UI tab bar controller, depending on which one you're using, right? And that's what we're doing. It's just an instance. So how do we create this thing? So what we want to do is we want to delete the controller, right, that comes with the standard file. So basically, we're going to just create our own. So we're going to kill this view controller.swift that comes with our standard app. So over here on the left, where it says view controller.swift, don't panic. All right, don't panic. It's going to kill our app. It won't work. If I kill this, look, I don't have a UI controller anymore, and I don't have a view did load or none of this stuff, right? So let's kill it. So I'm going to kind of delete it. It's going to ask me to put it in the trash, and I'm going to say, yes, put it in the trash, right? So it's gone. Now, when I do that, I got a problem, right? My storyboard, if I bring up my panel here, and if I click on this up here, the view controller, well, we got a bit of an issue, right? Notice that the class is pointing to is view controller, which doesn't exist, right? And and there's no identity for this thing. There's a bunch of stuff that's missing, and we're going to fill this back in there. This is the third tab in, right? So you notice that there is the file inspector, right, for the files. There's quick help, and then we come to this one, which is the identity inspector, and the identity inspector connects our file to our storyboard. Now, this is really good to know about. Again, you can always start with the MultiView app that comes with the template, which we saw, but let's start from here. So that's the first thing. So we delete it, and then what we want to do is we want to create a new one. So we're going to go to a new file, but we're going to right-click on the view switcher group, which is this for me. I just called it MultiView app. You might have called it view switcher. If I right-click and I go new file, right, what it's going to do is it's going to ask us what kind of file I want. Now notice I have lots of options. I can make C++ if I really want to. By the way, I'm not crazy about C++ or anything. I'm not going to tell you, oh my God, C++, let's pray to C++. It's not like that. I'm just telling you there's other languages you can connect to, and one of them is C++. Another one is Objective-C. So which one do we want? We want the Swift file, right? That makes sense for us. So we're going to click on Swift, click Next, and we have a chance to call our view controller whatever we want. And now what they're suggesting is that we call it switching view controller. So that's what I'm going to call it. So I'm going to call it switching view controller, right? And then click create. When I do this, it has some problems. Okay, I got a view controller. By the way, one thing to note is I can click on my view controller and move it around in here because this is just a representation of what's happening in my solution, right? It's not related to what happens on the operating system. The folders in the operating system I showed you before are totally looking different than these files in here. This is a virtual representation of what my project looks like, right? So I can move around these files however I want. Notice that I also, because I'm using Git, I have this little A here for add. M is for modify. So you might see those kind of things if you've added it to your this solution to a source control. Already done. I'm also got a problem here, right? What's the problem? What am I missing here when I create my files? Can I use Foundation for iOS? Can I? That's when I say the import. This is going back to C++, or even actually original C. I'm going to get rid of all these comments for a second, just to make it clear here. So I got my Foundation, but there are other frameworks. This is the Foundation framework, and the Foundation framework is all the Objective-C stuff, right? I don't want to use Objective-C, but how come I'm getting the Foundation framework in my Swift app, right? I asked for Swift. How come they're not attaching me to UIKit, which is what I need, right? Well, they don't know what you want, right? So I'm going to start typing UIKit, and notice it comes up. Now there's a bunch of other stuff here, right? That I can choose. Like for example, if I wanted to try and use ARKit, is it available? Yes, it is. That's ARKit, the new one. Is that available? Right? Well, no, not off the deep end here. How about SceneKit? Can I bring that up? Yes. You know, how about other things like SpriteKit, right? There's a bunch of things like, you know, that I can bring up, see that are part of a package I can import to add functionality to my application. We're going to do some of this later on in more detail, but I just wanted to make you understand how these files are set up. So we want UIKit. Let's put that into place. Yay. We don't care about Foundation. Now remember, what we want to do is we want to name our Switch View Controller class the same as we had before. So without actually looking at the PowerPoint, let's try this out. I'm going to make a new class, right? And if I go through here, notice that I can make it a Swift subclass. I have some options. If I just type class, and if I click Swift subclass, you can see that this is what the Swift subclass is going to look like, right? So I have the name of my class, which I want to match with the name of my file, right? How did I get this, by the way? Let me undo this thing. I typed the word class, yeah. And then I noticed that there's some options here. I just double clicked on this option, right? So it's a stub. So inside my class, I know what I can call it. I want to call it Switching View Controller, right? So I'm going to call it Switching View Controller, right? And I wanted to inherit from, this is what it inherits from, after the colon, I inherit from UI controller, UI view controller, right? That's what it's going to be inheriting from, this part right here. And then I got some code right here that I need. Notice it goes away. So those two things are part of every view controller that I'm setting up. I'm just setting this up from scratch so you understand how this thing is made, which is a really good thing to understand, okay? So remember that I want to add a view did load method, or it's called a function. So if I start typing view did load, right? And if I double click on this like this, double click, right? It actually does a stub for me. So I'm ready to go, right? And I can put whatever code I want in here, right? Whatever code that I normally have in here, I can put in, right? So what other stuff can I do? Anything that I want to type. If you notice, if I press Control, I think it was Control. Let me try that again. If I press Control space, right? You can see that I have other options that it'll give me suggestions of other things that I can add in, right? That are possible for me to code. It'll actually code some of the stuff for me. One thing to note is I didn't write this code. Override. Why do I have the override keyword in there? Anyone know? Who's the object-oriented people in the room? So why do I have the override keyword? How come? What am I overriding? Perfect. So the UI view controller here, the superclass, right, has something called view did load attached to it, right? And if I actually look at it on the over here, you can see that my override, this thing here, is part of my UI view controller itself. So if I look at UI view controller and I click on one of these things here, it'll tell me kind of, you know, what this thing is about. It's kind of really, really cool. If I want to say what this class reference is about, it'll bring up everything about UI view controller, right? Notice that the default language right now is Swift. I can also choose Objective-C like we did last time. And if I scroll down, it will talk about how to subclass. It'll also talk about the way this, I talked about this application lifecycle. This is really key to understanding how the application works, right? We talked about this. Remember I did those print statements when I put the app in the background and I brought it back. It did all this stuff inside the delegate, right? Well, some of this stuff, like view did disappear, view did appear, all this stuff is part of what UIKit and UI controller does, right? And if you scroll down, it gives you enough information that you can kind of look to see what are the required, some of the required things. By the way, constructor function, the constructor function is usually init. Normally in other languages, we put the name of the same class. Like for example, if my class is called switching view controller, my constructor function is called switching view controller, right? Not so in Swift. In Swift, it's called init. Huh? Why? Because they want to cut it down. That's why. Because sometimes what happens is you have your initialization function. Other programming languages use constructor, the name constructor. Like for example, in TypeScript, we use constructor. There's other ways of doing the same thing. It's just, for example, in Python, we use different ways of doing things than in this language. And remember that Swift is a modern language, and it takes from modern Python, JavaScript, and everything else that's really, really cool. What do they do in Kotlin? What's the constructor in Kotlin? Do you remember? We can probably find out if we want. I'm not going to do that here. But notice that that's what the constructor would look like, right? Interacting with storyboards and segues. We're going to talk about segues. We haven't talked about that yet. We will talk about segues. That's what they're called. There are transitions, different kinds of transitions we can make from one scene to another, right? It's called segues. And one of the functions we want to use when we move from one segue to the other is we want to prepare for segue, and we can perform the segue. So prepare segue. Hey, I'm ready to go from one scene to the next. I'm ready to move, right? And I can do that with a button. I can say prepare for segue, and then when I perform my segue, I can choose the type of animation that it's going to perform. Okay. Managing views. Is view loaded? View did load. There it is. I want to look at this function, right? Let's take a look at this view did load function a little bit. So what does it do? It says this method is called after the view controller has loaded. its view hierarchy into memory. The method called regardless of whether the view hierarchy was loaded from the nib file, that's the view file, the storyboard file, or programmatically in load view. Right now, even though I don't have my original class right now is not a UI view controller, it has an is-a relationship. For people who've never done object-oriented programming, I'm inheriting all these other functions that are built into UIKit. Okay, and one of the classes that I'm using is UI view controller. All right, so let's keep going. So we did this part. Notice it says that make sure, so name the class so-and-so, and then make sure that also create zip file is not checked, all right? Because what it does is it creates an additional storyboard file with you if you check that option. I didn't check that option. I didn't even have that option, okay? All right, we talked languages Swift, and we created a Swift controller class. We're going to inherit from UI controller. We talked about that as a custom class. But one of the things we have to do in our main storyboard in the document outline is you see that there is on the right where we want to choose. Let me go back to our main Swift main storyboard. You can see that when I went back to here to this option here, here's my main storyboard. And I have an option for my custom class. So if I choose on this view controller, that I can select my switching view controller. See that? If I don't do that, then there's no connection from my storyboard to my my code file. So I want you to think about this switching view controller itself as the code file that sits underneath your storyboard. Okay, so your storyboard has no functionality whatsoever without some kind of controller. And think about the controller. We talked about model view controller really quickly in the beginning, probably the first class. Your controller controls the logic, right, behind the file and behind the view. That's why it's called a view controller. It's view logic. That's what it is, right? It's all about that. So we connected it up here. So let's go back to the main storyboard. We connected this up, right? You can see that when I click on this thing, it comes up. We can also add a storyboard ID, which we're not going to do right now, right? Not yet, but we will do that. But this controller now is physically connected or has a reference to the main storyboard, to the switching view controller file. That's what we've done. Notice also that when we did that main storyboard, there's an M next to it. M means modified. So our Git repository is keeping track of our changes. All right, so we did that. We switched it, right? We did that. And now we're going to create another 2 view controllers, right? And one of them is going to be called the blue view controller, and the other one is going to be called the yellow view controller. Oh yeah, this is really, fantastic stuff, guys. Let's just do it. So we're going to go into here, and we're going to do 2 new files. We're going to create a new file, just like we did last time. We're going to go Swift file. We're going to next, right? And we're going to call one that's called yellow view controller. We'll call that one first. So there's a yellow view controller. Yay. And there's that one. And then we'll do the next one the same way. So new file, and we'll make it called blue view controller, right? Blue view controller, blue view controller, right? It's a Swift file again. Yay. We got 2 of them, right? Let's just get rid of all this stuff because they don't need any of this stuff, right? And just to be sure, just for more practice, I'm going to put these view controllers just underneath my switching view controller, so they're near it. We don't care about app delegate.swift right now or anything else. And my main storyboard, I'm going to put underneath these ones. So these ones can stay down here. I don't care about them so much, but I do care about these 4 files, right here. Okay. Now, this is the great thing. I know I'm going to do all this work, right? I know all this work is going to be done again in my yellow view controller and my blue view controller. And instead of copying and pasting, instead of typing, I'm just going to copy paste. I'm going to copy this one, my yellow view controller, paste it up. Right, and just change this from to yellow view controller. Right, and the same thing goes with my blue view controller. Right, and I'm going to change this to blue view controller. There we go. So that's not going to be any problems. By the way, can I build? Am I ready to build yet? Can I go like, Command B for builds? Does that work? Will it build? Yeah. It will, right? Because there's no errors. Turn the sound so you can hear the build sound. Yay. Try that again. Wait, I'll put it up on the real speaker so you can hear it all over the place. There we go. Try it again, right? Hey, there you go. So it builds, right? Even though it's not building anything, right? How about running though? If I press run, what would it actually show me? So I'm building it. It's going to pop up my iPhone 8 Plus. That's my my simulator. It's not going to take forever because we've already done this. And notice my view comes up and we're good to go. Hey, did you notice something? I'm recording and my iPhone 8 came up like this. How come? Not because I did it before. Because I upgraded to Mac OS High Sierra. That's one of the changes that I made, right? Mac OS High Sierra has a better, that's why I told you, there's a couple things that improved, just a couple things. One thing was Siri a little bit, some photo app stuff, and the file system, which is huge, right? And also it's compatible with Xcode 9, a little better than regular Sierra is, okay? So it's empty. It's cool because we haven't done anything. But notice that this view did load function didn't give us any problems, okay? So I save this, and let's go back. So we did this stuff, right? And you can see that we have the same kind of setup as they do right here. Now, we're going to move on fairly quickly after this, right? So we need to have this idea of, we want to be able to toggle between this blue and yellow view. We don't have blue and yellow views yet. I'm going to go a little bit out of bounds for a second. Let's go a little bit out of bounds, okay? What I mean by out of bounds is I'm not going to follow the PowerPoint 100%, right? I need a couple of more views, right? Let's bring them into the storyboard ahead of time. So we know we're going to need a couple more views. I'm just going to kind of hide this for a second. I can get my view controllers right here. Notice there's a view controller. If I drag and drop into the storyboard, I get another view controller. Yay, here's my other view controller. And notice that I can move this around. It's hard for you guys to see this because on display, it's probably not great to display this, but I'll show you this and I'll hide this screen a little bit, but you can see that I've got two view controllers now, right? See? I got this one and I got this one, right? And notice I still got to do this view controller stuff. So what do I need to do? Same thing I did with the other one. I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to go here and I'm going to select, let's select the first one will be yellow, right? So I'll select the yellow one, right? And I'll scroll down until I see my controller. You can also type it in. And there it is. There's yellow view controller. Yay, right? And let's, from my storyboard ID in the identity area, let's change this storyboard ID to yellow. Now, why do I need to do this? Because what it does is it creates a string that I can associate with my different view controllers. So when I want to switch between them, it gives me the ability to do that. Yay. Fantastic. There it is. There's my yellow, right? And, well, there's no way to get there right now from this one to this one. And I don't need one. We're going to make our programmatic later on. I'm going to create something called a segue. Not today. We're going to make a segue between these two view controllers. Let's add one more. So I'm going to kind of go down here, make some room in my storyboard, and I'm going to take my view controller and just drag and drop. Woo! There's another one. And I can move it around. And this one, notice like we did last time, we're going to point to the blue view controller. Yay! And in my storyboard ID, we're going to call it blue. And save. So I've connected my code behind files to my user interface, right? So I can make a connection. And if I run this thing again, it should run no problem, right? It should build. Yay, build succeeded. And if I run this thing, it should run nicely on my simulator, right? Shouldn't have a problem because I haven't done anything, right? Nope, because main is going to be the main one. The reason why we need an ID is it's going to switch between the two of them because it's going to kind of create a reference. And that's what we do here in our PowerPoint. Going back to the PowerPoint, notice that we have this code here, right? We have this idea of these outlets, right? We talked about outlets before, but we can actually create references to my blue view controller and my yellow view controller right here inside my class. So let's try doing that first. Okay, so these are the two. Inside my class, I'm going to go back into my switching view controller, right? There it is, my switching view controller. before my view did load, I'm going to make an area where I have some private instance variables. That's what these are. These are my private instance variables. And up there, I'm going to put some, notice what it says here, private var, right, which indicates the variable, private var. And I can reference my blue view controller and yellow view controller, right, and make them, notice the colon where it says is of type. That's what colon is of type. On your mind, when you see colon, that's what it means, right? So I got all these errors, but don't worry about it. So I'll say my blue view controller in lowercase, right, is of type blue view controller. Exclamation mark, because we're explicitly unwrapping. I'll do the same thing for our yellow view controller. Yellow view controller. Notice I'm using lowercase for this, right? Yellow view controller. Now, in other languages and in other setups, what I normally do for my convention, this is me, Tom, talking now, right? My convention, every time I make a private instance variable, I use the underscore as a convention to indicate that it's private. So before these things, I could put an underscore, right? And when I see that right away, I know in my mind it's private, right? It's a very quick way of understanding that. So if I see it somewhere else in my code, I know it's going to be something that's not going to be seen for other apps. I'm going to leave it like this. This is where I guess I digress from what it says inside the PowerPoint. Swift, the Swift way, if you talk to the Swift people, they'll say, no, don't do that. That's ugly, right? We don't need to do that, Tom, because we know that lowercase s means an instance variable as opposed to uppercase, like a lowercase b means something else other than the uppercase b, right? But to me, I think this extra little step for me, when I code, I do this because my mind, it's instant recognition. I know what it is. All right, so that's the first thing. The second thing they do here is they create this new IB action called switch views, right? Without actually dragging and dropping anywhere. So we're actually creating this from scratch. So it's a function. Function means method in other languages, okay? It's a func, that's what we do. Switch views is the name, right? And notice we have this sender. Remember we taught, what's the sender? What does it do again? As a review, what do we do with the sender? By the way, it doesn't matter whether you're doing this way or somewhere. It's the item that was clicked, the item that caused the event to raise. Whatever item raised the event, we called it raising the event. Whatever item raised the event, that's what the sender points to. We don't know what it is, but we know it's probably going to be some kind of, in this case, UI bar button item. We don't have that yet. We don't have a UI bar button or even a UI bar, right? But we know that's the type we're going to be expecting from it, okay? So let's write that in. I'm just going to copy paste. Right, so I'm going to kind of come down here underneath the view did load, and then I'm going to put it in here. Bam. If I was to type it, it would just give me some good code hinting when I'm typing this up. But notice I got this little circle here. What the heck? There's no line 13. I got this circle instead of line 13. Why do I have a circle? Yeah, I just got to ask these questions. So you know what it is, right? This is a connection. I can actually drag and drop to here, or I can drag and drop from here to connect with some kind of event raising view. For example, a button, right? Now it accepted UI bar button item because that is a class, right? It comes from UI bar item, right? And NS coding. It actually implements NS coding, which is a interface. We'll talk about interfaces later. They're not called interfaces in Swift. Okay, they're called something else, right? All right, let's go back. So we've got this piece so far. Are you all with me? We're going quick. All right, and then we have, it talks about what to do and that we need to drag and drop a bar. Really, at the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to grab our new button bar, right, and drag it onto the scene. All right, so let's go back to our main storyboard, and I want to search for button bar. If I just type bar in there, you can see that I got a tab bar, navigation bar, a bar button item, right, a tab bar item, right, search bar, a flexible bar. Hey man, where the hell is my button bar? What do I do then? So if I go button bar, is that there? Can I see something? What am I searching for, right? How do I get this thing? It says toolbar, right? And that's the one thing it didn't bring up, toolbar. There it is. So if I grab this toolbar, now look what it says. It says provides a mechanism to display a toolbar at the bottom of the screen, but this will appear at every screen. So notice that I got 3 UI view controllers here, right? Notice it even lists them. So here's yellow view controller, and down here is probably blue view controller. Let's move these away so I can move them away from my screen, so I don't need them right now. You can kind of rearrange them the way you like. It actually does it automatically too. You can rearrange these automatically. We'll show you how to do that next time. But if you notice here that this one is where I want my toolbar to come in. So I'm going to grab my toolbar and drag it in right to the bottom of my screen. Right? It's nice and centered. Now what they ask you to do is you want to go to the pin icon, right? Here's the pin icon. And these little dotted lines here, you want to kind of click these 3 icons right here, these little dotted lines. We had all kinds of fun last week with this stuff, right? These constraints, right? What this really does is it adds 3 constraints that basically allows this button bar to stretch across the screen. That's what it does, because it says I don't want any space 0, 0, 0, right? And if I click add 3 constraints as an example, then that should add all the constraints I need. Okay, let's run this thing now. Whoo. I'll run it, right? And it brings up my little simulator, a button, yay, at the bottom, right? And if I click on this button, nothing happens right now. Okay, stop. Are you all with me? All right, so we stopped this thing. Let's just hide this thing. We can hide it by doing that, right? And you can see that I got this little item in here, but there's no connection, right? If I go back to my switching view controller for a second, you can see that it doesn't do anything. I made some references. I got some references to these 2 things are like outlets. That's what they're like, right? So if I call blue view controller or yellow view controller right now, I have physical connections with those 2 user interfaces, right? Because I have access to the view controller that's the code behind file. That's interesting. The code behind file behind the UI. Let's go back. All right, so we did that part. Yay. What we want to do now is, we did all that stuff. We want to, we added that stuff. We want to do this. We want to click on this and change it to Swift views. So switch views here. So I want to go back to my Xcode. And I want to go to the main storyboard. But you notice that to try and get in here somehow, sometimes it's hard. Right? If you double click in here, you can get this thing and it'll say switch views. But if you can't get in here, what you can do, of course, is use the outliner, right? This is the outliner. And you can see that under the toolbar, there is a switch views button. And I can add more buttons in there because this is, what is it? A button bar item. That's what it is, right? So if I look at bar again, I can see that I can get here's my toolbar, and here's a bar button item. So if I grab this and pull it in there, I can add as many of these bar button items as I want. Okay? I'm not going to do that now, but that's what it allows you to do. And it'll just appear here in the hierarchy, right? Or the outline. All right, cool. So we did this, switching, this thing. And what we want to do is, one thing it tells you, it says they support only a single target action, all right? Which is a little different than buttons. So what I want to do is I want to take this, right, this thing here, right, and I want to control drag it, and it says over to the yellow switching view controller icon at the top of the scene, right? Switching view controller icon. All right, so let's take a look here. Here's my switching view controller icon, not the yellow view controller icon, but the yellow, this one here, right? So I'm going to take this and move it there, or you can take this in the outliner and control drag it right from the outliner right to here. And now it's going to give you some options. All right. Switch view controller with sender and a bunch of other stuff. That's the one we want. But if you notice, that's on the next page because that's what we want. We want this switch view controller with sender selected action, right? Let's try that again. So I'm going to control drag from here to this icon right here at the top of the view controller right here. and it's going to give you switch view control with sender, this one. Has everyone got that? Doesn't do it for you? Control drag, oh, right up to this little yellow, the little yellow button right here. All right, so switch view with sender action from the pop-up. And then it says, I want to choose this thing with set, which is sometimes you'll see something else that asks you to do a delegate. It just tells you to redo if it doesn't work. All right, cool. And there's the view did load, right? So here's interesting. We didn't call the super view did on did load. How come? If I look at my switching view controller, you can see that it's overriding the original view controller. But what I should do every single time when I use an overridden function is called the superclasses function. So if I call super dot, I can see that the default action is super view did load, right? So what the heck is this? What is the super view did load method? What is it doing? I'm going to ask you, what do you think it's doing? What do you think this method is doing? You're new to this, right? So what does the super dot view did load function call do? What do you think it does? Oh, I love it. You're hitting right on there. So basically what it's doing is the superclass itself has a view did load function, right? We're overriding it, but we're calling the superclass's view did load, right? Because it has its own things it's doing. So to prepare for what we're doing. Notice also, hey, take a look at this. Automatically, we have this IB action here connected, right? And we did this because it has one action. Remember, it only allows one action. And this was a preparation. This switch views, because we're using this UI bar button item, right? It connects to the only one that matches it, which is this switch views function, right? So when we did this drag and drop stuff in the main storyboard, when we did that, we went to switch views, we dragged and dropped over here. What it did was instantaneously connected, right, with this IB action that we created ahead of time. And the way it knows how to do that is because it's of type UI bar button item. Hey, curious, can I drag and drop here instead? I'm just saying, well, let's try it out. So let's go to my main storyboard. Here it is. And if I look at all the events, and I got them a view, and notice that my switch views has this switch views with this item, and it's connected to switching view controller, right? Can I delete it? Yeah, it's right here, this little bar. So click, delete. Uh-oh. What did I do, man? Oh, man, we're in trouble. We're in trouble, man. No, we're not, right? So I'm going to bring up the same thing and see if I can connect to it. Can I just drag and drop from here? Will it do the same thing? That's what my question is. So control drag. I want to drag to this thing here. And, oh, man, what the heck? How come I can't seem to target this thing at all, right? I can do other things, right? These other outlets. What if I made my own? Can I do that? Well, this is interesting. It says the object is switching view controller. Instead of an outlet, I want an action, right? I want to choose the type of action. There's a UI bar button item, same as what I just did already, right? With a name, we'll just call it my function, right? We're going to kill it in a second. I'm just going to show you that it does it, right? And bam, right? It kind of did the same thing. So it's not like you're going to die if it doesn't happen. Do that. Can I undo it? Yes, I can. What about am I connected to anything? So if I go back and I want to kill this thing and I want to bring up my my inspector, look, I have a connection. I need to get rid of this too. And I can always go back and just correct everything by just doing the same thing I did last time, right? Which is not a big deal. And what it's going to do is going to find the first one that matches this template and connect to it. Just FYI, so you understand how everything works, okay? Wonderful. Now we got some code to put in. Here's something. It says that I want to, my blue view controller, here's my blue view controller, is equal to a storyboard, question mark, dot instantiate view controller with identifier blue. Hey, remember we put that identifier in there, blue, right? That's what it does. How come we don't put the yellow in there? Why? Why am I not putting yellow in there? How come it's blue? Well, because maybe we're only going to load that one view up ever. We're never going to go to the yellow one. Blue is the one we want to go to next, let's say. And for us to actually connect to it right away, we could. I'm just saying we could. But if we do that, we're allocating memory for something that may never happen. If we never click on that button ever, we're never going to see the yellow view controller, right? So if that's true, right, we're loading something for nothing. And it's called something called lazy loading, which you talk about inside of your PowerPoint there. So let's start this out. So we'll see if we can type this out. So notice that it does two things here. One, it does the storyboard. It talks about this being a storyboard. It talks about instantiating a view controller, a new view, with the identifier blue. That's what it's doing. So that storyboard is going to come up. As, whenever I do as, what does it mean in other languages? When I say as something, what is it doing? It's a special word. Cast, downcasting is what it's called, actually. It's called downcasting. And so what I'm doing is, when I downcast, I'm saying that the blue view controller is of type. I'm casting it as. I'm basically saying, because without that, we don't know what it is. And remember, Swift is a type-safe language. So it's going to make sure you explicitly tell it what it's going to be that you're creating, right? So I'm going to just copy-paste this one. And it's got to go inside of my switch, this view did load method, right? So this, when my view did load, it's going to go in here. And what this is doing is it's creating a link. That's what it's doing. It's creating a link to, let's do one of these. It's creating a link to this view controller. Now, here's something that I want to point out when we copy paste. What's my problem? Why is it giving me an error? I know what it is. Well, I didn't name it blue view controller. I named it underscore blue view controller, right? So that's why it's giving me a problem. And notice now that it's a different color, right? Hey, what's wrong with doing this? Can I do this? Self dot underscore blue view controller. Can I do that? Is that allowed? And what does self mean anyway? Anyone know? It's like this in other languages, right? That's what self means, right? So if you've never used object-oriented programming, self is equivalent to this in other languages, which means that in this current context, the context of this class, I'm referencing the blue view controller, the private variable blue view controller, which itself references another storyboard, right? Why the question mark? Because we don't know what we're getting back. We're implicitly initializing storyboard, the storyboard type. And when we instantiate this thing, we're kind of casting blue view controller. If I hover over it now, notice that I could have done it here in this variable, this var declaration, but why don't I want to do it up here? How come? Why don't I just want to kind of make a reference? I could have done this up here, right? Why don't I want to do it up there? Well, because the view never loaded, and that'll give you a null reference error. Because you don't have, the blue view controller doesn't exist until the view loads. The view itself, it represents two things, the user interface and the logic behind it. View loads, guess what happens? The logic, the view controller behind it, that code file, also loads and is connected. And it won't connect until the view loads. So sometimes if you want to initialize stuff, you do it inside the view did load function, okay? Next part. What we're going to say here is this blue view controller dot view dot frame is equal to a view frame, right? That's what it is. If I type this in here, what does this mean? So blue view controller, again, won't work because it's got to be, I'm just going to use my keyword self just to make it really explicit. You don't have to. Self, Swift says from a coding standards perspective that it's not required, right? Just like in C# and even in Java nowadays, you don't need this. Most of the time, it understands the context. But if you want to be really explicit, it's okay to use this or self, point out that it belongs to this item itself. I'm going to use self most of the time. I'm just letting you know. That's my coding style. You may hate it. Please forgive me. I apologize in advance, okay? All right, that's me. So this is self, and then I'm saying, well, what am I doing here? I'm setting a new view, the view that belongs to the blue view controller, the frame, which is actually the container itself, I'm just instantiating it or making a reference to a new view frame. That's what it is. Remember in Swift, I don't have to use the new keyword, right? Just like in C++. If I make a reference to a view frame, this is a class that exists in UIKit. I'm saying that, guess what? The view frame that belongs to the blue view controller is of type view frame. Yay. The next part, my switch view controller, right? From, it says nil to blue view controller. So what is this? What do you think this line is going to do? Let's think about this for a second. So copy this line. What do you think this line is going to do? I mean, I have to make sure that this is self dot underscore for a second, right? What do you think this is doing? Switch view controller, that's us, right? Switch view controller, it says from nil to, and why is this not working? Switch view controller, why is this not working? How come this didn't work? Switching view controller is what I called it, right? Okay, and that's what it's connected to, right? So I got to really be careful with my naming, right? Because I called it something different. If I put this in there, switching view controller, right? Is that going to fix it? Yeah, it does, right? What's another thing I can do? But hold on a second, it says incorrect. What's the problem here? Switching view controller. If I want to try and figure this out, it says incorrect argument needs in call from to expected nib name bundle. Hold on. Let's go back. Let's undo that change. Okay, switch view controller. All right. And when I first got this error, let's look at the error, right? I'm good to go. I save it, right? And if I build it, it should give me an error, right? And it says use of unresolved identifier, and then do you mean switching view controller? And if I click fix, it changed the name for me. This is really key, right? Now I've got another problem. Incorrect, it says. Let me see the incorrect argument labels in call. Why is this the case? How come you think that I'm having this problem? I talked about this at the first day of class, by the way. Come on, guys.
Maybe it's about 9 Xcode.
Xcode 9 could be. No, it's because of Swift. Swift has changed ever since this code was written, right? That's what it is, right? So if I go fix, watch this. It fixes this to nib name nil, bundle self, and now I get another error. It says, cannot convert value of type blue view controller, exclamation mark, to expected argument type bundle. Is there a fix for this? And the answer is no. What do I do? Oh man, I'm stuck. By the way, I knew this was coming, right? I knew this was coming, but because we want to switch between our one controller and the other, right? What would you do in this case? Anybody? I want to switch. Basically what I'm saying is, hey, call this, this ability for me to switch view controller. But guess what? Was I really wrong? Was switch view controller wrong? What was I really trying to do here, right? Because how can I call my own function? I'm calling my own function and passing in a nib name and the bundle, and that doesn't make any sense at all, right? Let's undo those changes. So I don't want to do this. I want to switch my view controller from one to the other, but I don't have a function to do this yet. Let's leave this alone, okay? All right, so this is the first part I've written. Notice this is my switch view controller, and I try to do this. I need a helper method to do that. And what you're going to notice is that inside my my function, I'm missing the ability for me to do this part, switch view controller. All right, so why? Because I don't have in here. Notice that I have this idea that actual loading of the yellow view happens in the switch views method, right? Where I want to switch view controller again, right? Notice that this is what the new code is going to be coming up. So that's not it, right? It says, hey, I'm just instantiating if my yellow view controller is going to send it off to the next one. So that's not it. But where the heck is that switch view controller happening? Here's my switch view controller function, right? Where I switch my view controller, but do I even have that switch view controller method yet? And if I scroll down here where I want to, I got a did receive memory warning. Hold on, there it is, right? I'm missing this thing, right? It doesn't exist yet. I would have to wait and wonder, if you're waiting and wondering what the hell this is, until now, right? Hell no, I say we just put it in now and fix it, right? So let's do it now. Let's put this in. I'm going to zoom in so you can see it, but it's also up online if you want to look at it. So what I'm doing is I have to create this new private function called switch view controller, and then I have a from variable, right, and to a to variable. That's what I have. Okay, so let's put that in. So this is valid actually. It's with a lowercase s, right? And I've got my switch views. I haven't done that yet. I haven't done my switch views, but I want to use a private, what it says here, a private function, which is called switch view controller. That's why it's kind of confusing, right? And I want a from, right, where it says from, that's the variable name actually, the type. So I'll say from view controller, right? From view controller, which is of type UI view controller. And I'm putting in UI view controller, right? And then I'll bring this up so I can't bring it up a little higher, unfortunately. But I could do this. Here, I'll do this for you guys. There you go. I could do this. And then to another view controller, right? So I have the from and to, which is the to view controller. That's what it's called, to view controller. I want to talk about this in a second, right? And just to make it more clear, I'm going to bring this down on the next line, right? So it's over here when I declare my function, which is, of course, another UI controller, UI view controller, this one. And then some open bracket, close bracket. Okay, it eliminates this problem. My problem is gone now. Notice? So what the heck is this? How can I do this? Normally in other languages, we don't do this crap, right? We don't go like from to, right? That doesn't hold any sway, right? I just have my variable names typically from view control. That's my variable name or my parameter name. And here's to view controller in Swift, right? But I also have these other things here, which are kind of like decorators. That's what they're like. They're decorating my method of my signature. So I can give a more contextual look to my methods. So I can say, well, switch view controller. It's almost like you talk like this. Switch view controller from this view controller to this other controller. And it takes the place. It's an alias. It's an alias, right, for the variable names. The variable names are actually called from and to view controller, but we're using these aliases from and to make it more user-friendly when you use this method. That's all it is. Does everyone follow? So they're not actually called from and to are aliases or friendly attributes or decorators for the function, so that I can, when I use the function, I can use this syntax up here. Switch view controller from some other view controller to the new view controller, whatever that is. Okay, that's what it's doing. Okay, cool. What else do we have in there? Well, if the from view controller is not equal to nil, that means if it's not unreferenced, yes? Say that again. You just went way too fast for me. If you don't want to use that, you don't have to. If you don't want to use the aliases, you can just use from and to, but then it's going to be like from VC and then Apple recommends to use the aliases because it's nice and clean. It's cleaner for them, right? So you don't have to. Okay, so here inside, I want to say these two if statements. If it's this one is not nil, then do something. If it's the to view control is not nil, do something else. Let's try that. So I'm going to put those in there. So I'm going to say if my from view controller, right, is not equal to nil, which is like null in other languages, then do something, right? And also, if my to view controller is not equal to nil, right, then do something else. That's the two next statements. Well, we know that the UI view controller itself, right? The first one, the from view controller probably won't be nil, right? But take a look at this. This was from nil to do this, right? Why is this syntax in here? Because what if you're already in the blue view controller, right? So by default, what's going to happen here is this. If you look at the code, by default, without even looking, right? This is going to take me by default codes. It's going to switch my view from what I am right now into the blue view controller immediately when I load. I will never see anything but a blue view controller. It's going to be my lot in life to see a blue view controller. To make that more apparent for now, right? Because I want to make this thing happen. Let's go back into my storyboard, my main storyboard here, and change these views, this one here, so the background looks blue. I'm going to go into the background, right, where it says white color. I want to change it to some blue color like this, right? And I want to go to this yellow one and change the background for this one to yellow. Was that the yellow one? Let's change it to yellow. Sorry. Yellow. Banana. And let's go this one and we'll make it, this one here is going to be blue. Right? So we'll choose some kind of blue color like blueberry. Blueberry banana. Right? Or how about aqua? I like aqua better. All right, cool. And we'll do the view controllers we're going to get into first. So we go from here to there. Yay. But notice what it says here. It says from view controller will move, right, to parent view controller nil, right, if it's not nil. From view controller dot view dot remove from super view. I'm going to figure out what this does, right? And from view controller dot remove from parent view controller. So when we do switch view controllers, it's going to will move to the parent to the parent view controller if nil, which is nil, right? Interesting. Remove from super view if it's not equal to nil, right? And remove from parent view controller. So again, if my from is not, if it's not a nil, it's gonna do this piece, right? Why would I do this? Because that means that if it's not nil, we're already in a view controller, some other view controller, blue or yellow, right? That's what it means. And when I remove it from super view, the super view is the main view, the main screen that I'm seeing at that particular moment in time. Okay. So again, we'll move to parent view controller is nil. So I'm going to put that in there. So I'm going to go back to this. So I'm going to call from view controller dot will move, right? And then to parent view controller, which is nil, right? That's what it's asking me to do. That actually figured it out on its own. Half that code wasn't even mine, right? And the other one is from view controller. And also notice that it had a question mark automatically. It's asking me to implicitly convert like this, right? Explicitly, I mean. And in here, the other thing it's asking me to do is go from remove from super view. So I'm going to say, well, my whatever the from is, wherever I'm coming from, I want to look at the view and remove from super view, right? Which actually removes the controller from the super view. So wipes it out. Our current view controller is the switching view controller. So when we leave from there, because it's not nil, right? It's nil, right? It's going to go here. It's going to go to the new view controller. So when I first go here, it's not even going to do this. It's going to come to here. Okay. Next. There's 3 commands. And the next one is remove from parent view controller. So from view controller, view, remove from, is it view? Oh, no, just remove. Remove from parent view controller. So remove this cleanup. That's what this one does. This one here cleans up. I'm going to put that in there. A little comment. Cleans up current view controller. That's what it is, really is. View controller. Right? I know it is. Well, it seems that way, but all it is just clean. It's just cleaning up, right? That's what this part does. So this is what, and then this part, if it's not equal to nil, which it would never be typically, right? Well, if it's not equal to nil, we say go to whatever the option is, add child view controller, whatever it is, to the parent. That's what it's going to do. Add this new view controller to the parent. Remember, just like we're removing it? Here, we're removing it from the parent. Here, we're adding it to the parent. All right, so self.add view controller, add child view controller. There it is. Add child view controller. And then 2VC, right? So it's like, notice what it says here. It's 2VC, 2VC, Leslie Unwrap. So this adds this new view controller, whatever I'm sending it to. So, and the first one is the blue view controller. It's going to add that one as a child to the parent class. So the parent view controller is my switching view controller, and it's going to add that in, right? The new blue view controller as the child of the super view, right? And again, this we'll see another way of doing this in another class. And then here we're going to insert a subview, which is the view, the container that comes in my blue view controller at 0, which is the index. You can have as many subviews as you want, right? This is index 0, the first index, the first object inside the display list. That's what it is. There's a display list of views, and this is the first one inside the outliner. That's what it's going to be. So self, right, dot view, dot insert subview, right? And the subview, the view is going to be what it says, the 2VC dot view, right? And then the integer, it says at, and this is the index that it's going to add it into, the 0th index, the 0th display list, right? And how do I know this is happening? Because remember up here what we did? We said that, well, my view frame is equal to a view frame, right? And this is creating an empty view container that contains everything. And the last piece is, after we insert a subview, we're going to did move controller self. Okay, so again, if you notice what it says, 2VC did move to parent view controller self, which means that, guess what? My parent view controller self means this view controller. So now my switching view controller is the parent view controller for the new view. That's what it's doing. It's actually attaching the new view as a subview or a sub-view controller of, I'm creating a hierarchy. That's all I'm doing. And the top of the hierarchy is this switching view controller. That's all it is. So in my main storyboard, as an example, the blue view controller is going to be the second one. And the first one is going to be this one. This is the hierarchy, my switching view controller, right? So it starts here. And then if I go here or here, this is the super view controller. This is the parent view for all the other views. Okay, why does it do that? Because see this little bar down here? If I have a parent, my subview, which is this, it's going to fit nicely right in here. So my bar is going to stay here. It's not going to change. I'm not going to have multiple bars. I don't need a new bar on the child views. These are the child screens. They don't need a new bar because they're going to physically fit inside this space right here, right in here. So they're actually going to load in here, right? Or it's going to appear that way. How about that? Think about this parent view as a template. This is my template for all the other subviews that I attach to it. So any other buttons or whatever I put in the parent view are going to appear in the subviews. Especially this special one, which is this toolbar. All right, so we did this piece ahead of time because I couldn't stand the errors, right? The errors were driving me crazy. Hey, is this enough? Do you think this is enough for us to move to the other view? I don't have any other logic, right? Can I move to the other view? Would it automatically launch my blue view? What do you think? Let's see what happens. So we don't know if it's going to work. I build first, right? If there's any errors, it's going to come up now. Here's my build succeeded. Yay. Okay, that's good news. So let's run it and see what happens. If I'm right, if we're good, it should take me right into the blue view. And take a look at this, right? What it does. It automatically gives me this switch view button, even though I never put it in there, right? Again, think about my parent, right, as the super container that contains these other views. That's what it does. Okay, pretty simple stuff. But there's no way if I click on this switch views thing, nothing happens, right? I can never get to my yellow container ever, right? That's a problem. You got to fix that problem. We're going to do it now. And then we're going to stop this craziness because I have to give you time to work like I promised you. So let's go back to the top here where I did all this nutty stuff here, right? So we started off in this function right here. And once we've done the viewDidLoad function, we had this error. And that's why we couldn't get to it, because that method didn't exist. All right, so what we want to do, though, is further down, the actual loading of the yellow view happens in the switch views method. Okay, the switch views method. Remember, the switch views method is connected by that button, right? The button. Well, the button has nothing inside of it. So we have to kind of code this stuff now inside that switch view method, this method. And look what it says. It says if yellow view controller .view.superView is equal to nil. That means that, hey, if the yellow view controller doesn't have a connection to anything, then I'm switching to the yellow view controller. Else, switch to the blue view controller. That's what it means. Now, they put in this extra option down here, right? This is the type-safe way to do it. But really, if I left this part out and just put else, right, it would just switch to the blue controller automatically. It's just going to assume that it's the blue view controller we're switching to. Okay? So let's put these two statements in. If yellow view controller .view.superView is equal to nil. Right? So that happens right in here, inside this switch views method, when I click my button. So if my self._yellow view controller, right, .view, right, is equal to nil, that means I want to switch. Else, if self._blue view controller.view.superView is equal to nil, this is the type safe way to do it, then do something else. So it's really checking. It's going to toggle, the button is going to toggle between one blue view and the yellow view. That's what it's going to do, between one and the other, all the time. And what I'm going to use is equal, Tom. Equal. And what it's going to do is, right, when I toggle between them, are you ever going to see my original switching view controller ever? No, right? My switching view controller is the navigator. I want you to think about it as a navigator that controls which of the other views I'm seeing. Okay, that's one way we're going to switch between views. This piece in there. And what I want to do is, well, I want to do another check. I've said if my yellow view controller is equal to nil, right? So I'm checking if it's equal to nil, right? If it is, then I want to instantiate my view controller, right? That's what I want to do. My storyboard, instantiate view controller with identifier yellow as the yellow view controller, right? That's what it does. So I'm going to create that view, right? Uh-oh. Wait a minute. What did I just make that other function for if I just do this then? So if my self._yellow view controller, not eyeball, yellow view controller, right? If it's equal to nil, equal, if it is equal to nil, then what I want to do is I want to instantiate my view controller with identifier yellow. Okay, so storyboard. Instantiate view controller, and look at there's two options here. Look what it comes up with: instantiate view controller and instantiate view controller with identifier. We've already identified, maybe connected it with identifier string. String is yellow, blue, whatever you want, right? So we're going to say yellow. That's my, and we're going to cast it. We're going to downcast it as, right, a yellow view controller. That's what we're going to do. This actually does the switching. Now it also says, hey, warning. It says expression of type yellow view controller is unused, right? Well, why is that? Because, well, it doesn't understand what we're doing, right? It's just a warning because it doesn't know whether I need to do this or not, right? And we're going to do the same thing for this one. If my blue view controller is nil, then the blue view controller is going to be the one that's instantiated. So if self._blue view controller is equal to nil, I know you guys are saying it's complicated. Well, it kind of is, but it makes sense if you think about it. Then my storyboard, I want to instantiate on my storyboard with identifier, right? And it's going to be blue as the blue view controller. Now, again, I want you to think about what I'm doing here. When I click the button on the toolbar, it's going to activate this function. And it's going to say, okay, well, what am I doing here? What am I? It's going to check to see if one is nil or the other is nil. Question to you, will it go to both? No. First, it's going to check to see if it's yellow. Why would we check yellow first? I'm just talking from a branching perspective, logic. Why am I checking yellow first? Because we start as blue. So chances are, if I'm going to click this button for the first time, I'm going to go to the yellow controller next, right? That's why I'm checking it, because it's the first one I'm going to check. It's the most logical way to put it, right? I could have done it other ways too. This could be coded in different ways, right? Okay, cool. So is this enough to take us to my yellow view controller and back? Let's run it. Let's go build. Builds, good, and run. Let's see if that runs. Let's see if that's enough. All right, so here's my blue. Switch, click the button, and oh man, what the heck? Fatal error, right? Something missing, right? It doesn't do any cleanup, right? It's got to go there, but then, oh man, it's not doing any cleanup. It's not doing this stuff. It's not doing this stuff, switch views. It's not switching views, right? It's doing this. It's instantiating, just like we did this, right? Here's my instantiation. But, oh man, what the heck? I haven't done the other part. When do I do that? Well, I'm just impatient because it's right here, right? It's the second part of the PowerPoint, right? And if you notice here, I'm actually calling my switch view controller from in here. Now, this is kind of weird code because notice that I'm using another if-else statement, right? So if blue is not equal to nil, and then else, if it is equal to nil, then do something else, right? So there's two parts to this whole thing. There's the setup. Here's the setup. In the object. But instantiation does not mean attachment. It just means I'm making my object. That's all I've done, right? When I make my object, I have to follow through with the other stuff. I have to attach it. I have to add the subview, right? But I have to remove the other one, right? And I can do that in the previous function we wrote together, okay? So this part is also key. So down here underneath this part here, I'm going to continue, right? Now notice this part's complete, right? And now where would this be? Take a look at this. If I want to write the code properly, right? So I closed off this curly brace, which ends the else statement, which means this is a brand new if else statement. Okay, let's try doing that, right? So down in here, if underscore blue view controller, right? If that's not equal to nil, we're going to set it up. Oops. I made too many of these handlebars, right? And then else, if it's something else, then it is nil, right? So this is where the else comes into play, right? So else, do something else. And this part. And what this does is it actually attaches So this does the cleanup. Cleanup, current view controller, and attach a new one. That's what this does, this part. This part just instantiates, this one here, instantiates the new view controller object, whatever that is. This does. So first, when I click the button, it instantiates the object. I have it, and now I got to attach it, and that's the next part. Okay. If I don't attach it, it doesn't live inside my super duper view, which is switching view controller. It doesn't live in there. It doesn't exist at all, right? This is the second part. So the second part is this part here, right? And then notice that it says, well, there's two parts actually. I said if this is not equal to nil and double and my blue view controller, the view.superView is not equal to nil at all, right? If both of those cases are true, it has to be both. So and self dot blue view controller dot view dot superView is not equal to nil, right? So we're checking for both of those cases. In this case, both of them have to be true in order for you to do the rest of the stuff. And the next part is I'm saying, well, okay, we're instantiating the new one. So, well, this looks very familiar, this code, right? It looks like this code up here. Look. Right? So if I take this code right here, up here from line 14 and 15, which I wrote in my view did load, and I put it down in here and change it a little bit down here. If I change it a little bit, so instead of my blue view controller, I want to do my yellow view controller, right? And I'm not switching from my nil, I'm switching from my blue view controller, right? Blue view controller to my yellow view controller. Does that make sense? By the way, guys, if I'm going too fast for you, or if it's not making sense when I look at this thing in the beginning, I want you to think about what's happening here. So my view did load. This happens, this triggers, right? After the application loads. Okay, that's really what it does. I want you to think about that. And then this part down here is triggering when I click my button. So triggers when the switch views button on the toolbar is pressed. Okay, that's what this does. This part sets up and it instantiates it. This stuff switches it. And I'm going to do the same thing here, these last two lines. I'm going to take them and copy them in here. And this time it's going to just swap from yellow to blue. So this is going to go my blue view controller. It's going to come from my yellow view controller and go to my blue view controller. Okay. So the first one we go to is nil because it's the parent, right? When we go to the blue view controller for the first time, it's the parent view controller. So our from is nil, right? But when I go to my blue view controller, I'm already there. And if I want to switch to my yellow one, the from isn't nil anymore, right? We're moving from one view controller to the other. So I got to do some cleanup. That's what I'm doing. Okay. By the way, the code is all up online. Now let's test it if we can see it. So build it. It builds and run it. And let's see if it runs this time. And if I click on the little button here that pops up, then we should take, oh man. Oh, what the heck? What did I do wrong? Well, it says this yellow view controller is equal to nil. The thread is a bad, it says bad something or another, right? So what do you think is happening here? If I actually look at the bottom here, it says, oops, fatal error. Here's the error. It says, my simulator has requested new graphics quality 100, fatal, unexpected found nil, optional value. All right. And it says, that's what the problem is. So how do I fix this problem? Okay, so I'm unwrapping an optional value. Did I miss something here in my switch views? Notice that this storyboard is question marks, right? and I want to swap, I want to switch, right? But if I look at my code up here on the previous slide, did I miss something? I got my storyboard as a question mark. I got my yellow view controller. Oh, what the heck? Look at that question mark. I missed that. Yellow view controller here. Did I put it in? Hold on, right? Oh, man. Look at that. Mark. Gosh darn it. Right? And you're going to say, what? That stopped us? Did it stop us? And is there somewhere else like that? Did I miss it somewhere else? By the way, it's deceptively easy for you to miss that kind of stuff, right? It's not here. Here it is. And blue view controller exclamation mark, right? In the second part, blue view controller exclamation mark is this one, right? That one you need an exclamation mark, right? But what the heck is that question mark doing? Do I really need it? I mean, I can build, no problem. How come the running fails all the time when I go from one view controller to the other? It couldn't be that easy that if I click on this thing, it switches. No way, right? Something else is wrong. Because it says some kind of exception. I'm getting a bad something or another when I'm moving from one frame to the other. Hold on, did I miss something here too? Right, this view frame is equal to view frame thing. Is that what's written there anyway? Did I skip something? Well, yeah, look, take a look at this. So here's my, I'm setting up my view frame again like normal. I'm going from to two, and that doesn't seem to be good, right? That's not enough, right? Is there something else we're missing? Right? And just make sure that this is not something else. Oh yeah, memory warning stuff, right? Let me make sure that we didn't get that memory warning stuff. Yeah, okay. We got to set it to nil, right? This is where it happens, right here. The did receive memory warning that we've been ignoring and we erased last time, right? It might help us out here. Let's see if we can do this, right? Because if we get a memory warning that it's nil, then we want to set the blue view controller and the yellow view controller to nil, right? This is what might fix our problem, right? All right, so how do I set that up? So I stop. I'm gonna go back up here. You can see I'm going fast, but it's recorded, right? Here's my view did load. Typically what we do is with the memory warning, what I like to do is put it at the bottom. That's me when I code, right? Everyone does it differently. Again, I mean, I have a way of doing this because it's right here. All right, so again, I'm gonna go control space and I'm gonna say did receive memory warning, right? I'm gonna talk about it and double click on this thing and then bam, I got the, little template. And of course, I'm going to call my superclass, right? Because I want to do that. So I want to make sure the superclass is taken care of, right? For did receive memory warning. And to your, by the way, to your comment last time, it's complicated, right? But it's okay. It's not something we can't do. And then if I'm going to check if my blue view controller or if my yellow view controller is not equal to nil. So let's try this out. So if my self._ blue view controller is not equal to nil, then do something. And if my self.yellow view controller is not equal to nil, then do something else. And the things we're doing is we're setting the, well, and this too, and the yellow and the blue view controller view.superview is equal to nil. Both those have to be the case. So, and my self._ blue view controller view.superview is equal to nil, right? And we want to put an exclamation mark here. And same thing goes with this one. And my self._ yellow view controller view.superview. What's happening here? Why are we doing this thing? Is equal to nil. What am I asking for here? What's this conditional statement? Well, this is saying that, well, okay, my blue view controller is a reference to a controller. some view controller. If it's not equal to nil, that means I've made a reference. I've connected this to something. Okay, now cool. That's the first check. Second, if it's not equal to nil, well then check to see that my also that my blue view controller super view is equal to nil. If it's equal to nil, then one of those conditions, both those conditions have to be true, but I want to set my blue view controller, which is up here, I want to set it to nil. So blue, so self dot underscore blue view controller, I'm going to set that to nil. That it is automatically made. It's just in case it's a kind of a memory thing. So I don't have to have a problem with, do I have to put an exclamation mark? I do not. And that should take care of our memory warnings. So basically what that's doing is it's saying, well, because we're switching between one view and the other and we're killing references, what happens? What can happen? Well, I can have a memory leak, right? Because my reference to that particular view, I'm not actually killing that view. It's removing it and stuff like that, right? But it's actually not being destroyed, right? I'm replacing it, but it's going to reallocate new memory for another view. What happened to the old one, the older memory? So I think about this way. I have a memory location, and I'm going to assign it to a view, this new screen that I'm putting up, right? And then I move from one view to the other, and I say, okay, forget about this one. I want this one now. It's still there. It's still allocated. The memory is still there. So what this does is it cleans that up and destroys or eliminates that blue view. And once that it does, because it does automatic reference counting in Swift, you don't have to keep track of all the references. When you do nil, you eliminate, you destroy that reference. It's almost like using the destroy keyword in some object-oriented methodologies, right? All right, does this help me? Let's see if that works. So build and run. I'm doing them separately because I want to also check to see if it just builds first, right? And, oh man, still got stuff to do. What the heck? What is going on here, right? What have I done wrong? Nothing is the answer. We did this piece, right? And if you notice what it says here, it calls the did receive memory warning error, and then we need to add this one, which we already did. Did I do something wrong? I may have mistyped something. Huh? How come it's not working for me? Should be working for me too. Yeah, we don't do that. Sorry, say that again. Yeah, I may have. Go. Let's go back. So where is it? Here? Here. I don't think so. I think I got everything, man. I think mine is what's we call Xcode 9. Anyone want to get it to work? You guys did, right? Anyone else? Who's using Xcode 9? Anybody else? Someone up here to Xcode 9. One of you guys. Yeah? Beta. Okay, but anyone, someone else upgrade to Xcode 9? Maybe mine's not working because I'm using the next one. Or maybe I mistyped something in my fervor to get it done as fast as possible, because it's where I'm going to stop, guys, right here. Right? All I want to do is switch views. That's all I'm looking to do, right? Because I want to give you some time to do the other things like I promised you. All right, so let's go and review, right? So we've got our code base right here, and I'm not going to be able to figure it out because it's not my code, but I'm going to go make sure that I did this. So there's my view did load. First, I'll start with this one. So I review. Usually what I do is I typically review what I've got, and I start with the top. So I said, here's my view did load. Do I have everything here? So super view, yes. My view controller, blue view controller, storyboard. Yes, instantiate view controller. I did this part with identifier blue. Yes, as blue. Wait. Did I put uppercase or lowercase for my identifiers? Things to check. Little stupid things, but you never know. Capital. That's good. Blue. Yeah, I know that this sounds silly, but you know, I'm telling you right now, believe it or not, this stuff can really get you into trouble if you don't check this stuff, right? Okay, inherit module from target. We're good, we're good, we're good. So that's pretty good, right? So that's part is done okay, blue. And we're gonna go back to my switching view controller. Get rid of this stuff again. Sorry, I just had to check that. As blue view controller, yes. Yeah, I've done that correctly. My blue view controller frame.view.frame is equal to view.frame from nil to self.view blue view controller, and that's what it is. Yay. Okay, my switch views. Okay, let's go to that one. Switch views is the code that I just put in. And I did all this stuff. And in a second, I'm going to stop and I'm going to figure it out on my own. And then I'm going to say, that's it, guys. Have you checked? If anyone else run it, can anyone else run this and make it work, please? No, you can't run it either? Really? Maybe you typed it wrong like me. Switch views. Yellow view controller. View super view is equal to nil. It's here that we have a problem, right? Right here. In this exception right here. Oh, that's funny. La 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 la. Yellow view controller. Thank you. I knew it was something, right? Yep. Yep. That's it. Thank you. I knew it was something I missed that. That should have worked before too. I was like, maybe it's this. All right. Don't think I'd do it anywhere else, but let's see if this works. So build. I built before too, by the way. Notice that? And run. And switch, baby, switch. There we go. And switch, baby, back. And switch, baby, switch. There we go. Guys, that's all I want to do today. Switch between two views. So you can imagine the same kind of code that I put into place. I'm going to put this up on GitHub for you guys so you have it. But if you're going to, the exercise today was take your calculator app and with a button, it could be doesn't have to be this button, it can be any button, switch to the next view, right? This button is just a special button that actually gets you there. The switch views button, you could make other kinds of ways of switching back, right? Like you can make it done when it gets to that other place. You can change the toolbar when you get there to change the words from switch views to done, right? So in other words, you can have a settings bar. I can say settings in your main screen. And when you click it and it goes to the other screen, it'll say done. It goes back, right? And you can do that because you have access to this switch views button because it's inside here. You can actually make a reference to the switch views button itself, right? The sender object of the switch views button. You can change it, the title of the button, to something else. When you come back, you can switch it again, right? So you can use the same button and it can look like two different things. All right, so let's put this up on GitHub. How do I do that? Source control. I want to do a commit, right? Here's all these changes I made. Whoa, okay. I created my the switching views project. That's what I did in one blow. I want to push, but I want to commit my files first. This is local commit, and I want to push, but guess what? I don't have a remote to push to, so I've got to create my Git repositories locally. It tells me what to do. It says create Git repositories. Yay! And oh man, all projects are already there. Oh, what do I do? I'm in trouble. I don't know what to do. Well, notice that I had all kinds of changes, right? And if I discard all changes, and go back, right? And if I try and commit again, I have these same changes that I had in here. But how do I fix this problem? Because this sometimes happens, like it happened just to me. What do I do? Well, remember what I have. What I have here is I can open this up in inside my Finder, right? I want to find this thing. So show in Finder actually shows me my actual files. Here's my actual files, right? And notice that I have, if I go back up one to this, here's my Xcode projects, right? This is my MultiView app. Remember right here? And inside my MultiView app, I have a couple of folders, right? Here's my couple of folders here, right? So I have XC assets and I have this other Xcode project. I want to stay here when I do my stuff. So I'm going to close down my Xcode for a second. I'm also going to close down my simulator. Here's my simulator. And I'm going to bring up my my command bar here, my command line, right? And I want to CD space, and I want to drag and drop this folder, this one here, in here, right? Which is going to take me here. Notice I'm on the master branch, and if I do a git log, right, you can see that I tried to make this thing happen. But let's say I messed up completely. Let's just say, and I want to fix my problem. How do I do that? Well, remember what I can do. I can always remove, right, the .git, minus RF. .git folder. I think it's -RF. Remove -RF. I'll be okay. .git. Hey, and then if I look at this, I have no Git folder anymore, but I can just create it again, right? I can say git init, git add dot, git commit -m initial commit. And then once I've got this part done, what I could do is go back up and connect it to a repository, which I didn't have. So here's GitHub. And I want to go to Centennial College. And what I want to do here is I want to create a new repository, make sure it's the right place. I'm creating it. And I want to call this MAPD714-fall 2017. And we'll say switching view app, right? Switching. And when I do that, it gives me the last two lines that I need, which are right here. And I can copy them, put them back here, and paste. And now, my friends, it'll push everything up to GitHub, just like that. But what does this look like in with Xcode? Well, hold on. I could go back up into my MultiView app right here, and it should fix it when I come back in here again. So if I double click, it'll bring me back in here. If I go to source code, right, I should be able to commit and keep track of my stuff now. This, well, I can push to my remote. Notice it says origin remote, right? One thing that I don't like about source control in Xcode is I would love to see more options here to do configuration, right? That's one thing I don't have here from a configuration perspective, right? Now, there's probably a way of doing it, but I'm not really familiar with that, right? From a preferences perspective, I guess you could do source control preferences and go to Git, right? This is me, right? You can do or subversion, that's the other one, but this isn't it, right? So this is just preferences for Xcode, so I don't want to do that. But it'd be nice if you can actually have a settings bar for source control. All right, that's it. You should have everything up online now. If you check, if I refresh, you can look at, there's one commit up online. Here's my initial commit. And you can see that if you downloaded my project, you have all the information that I put in here before. Now notice I did one thing. There's nothing in my blue view controller or my yellow view controller because it doesn't do anything right now. All I'm doing is switching between the two of them. But you can imagine if I put other kinds of controls in there, they would pop up, right, when I loaded my view controller inside of my super view controller, which is my switching view controller. So the hierarchy goes like this. I have my switching view controller, and I have these other two other view controllers, right? And when I load them in, that middle part becomes inside of the other ones. That's what happens, right? So if I add buttons and all that kind of stuff, it'll appear inside the super view controller. Any questions around this stuff? I know I went quick, but I wanted to give you as much time as I could. And we're already at 9:16. Yeah.
Any widgets that you put on the super controller, they would always be visible, right?
Any buttons?
Any buttons
Yes,
or any-
yes, yeah. And there's special ones.
No matter how many
Well,
controllers
let's try that. Okay, so just because you're asking, not because I want to, but just because you're asking, let's try this out. So if I go to my main storyboard, let's experiment a little bit, right? And if I look at, notice in my outliner now, I have 3 outlines, right? Here's my switching view controller. Here's my blue view controller. And here's my yellow view controller. And notice they're called scenes, right? 3 scenes, right, in my storyboard, right? That's why it's kind of a neat paradigm that Apple puts together, a nice little thing, right? So notice I only have this. What if, I'm going to go with your suggestion, I put some random button in there, right? Will it appear? Like, let's say, for example, a label like welcome at the top. So I'm going to put a random label. Right, so I'll grab this label, put it inside my view control at the top, and let's see what happens to it. Will it remain? I'm going to leave it as label, right? Save, and let's run it, see what happens. Okay, so I have a control, and then what happens to my funky simulator when it comes up? Yeah, see? So whatever I had in my super view, what happens when I go to my yellow view? Yeah. So what does that mean? That means that that label, which is part of my super view, right? My master controller, my master view controller, right? I have to make a reference to it, but I can control it. So if I'm in the yellow view, if I really want to, it'll say yellow view, right? And if I'm in my blue view, it'll say blue view. How do I do that? Well, let's figure this out, because you're asking. I was going to stop, but you asked, right? And now I always get into trouble when I do this, but hey, let's do it, right? So notice that I want to bring up this part here, right? So let's take this away here. And I'm going to take this just to give myself some more real estate. I'll take this over here as well. And I'm going to bring up my super view. Here's my label. I'm going to leave it as label for now. But in my switching view controller, notice I have 2 private instance variables. I want to make an IB outlet for this one as well. So I'm going to control drag from here into here, underneath here. And now this outlet, I'm going to call it as the welcome label. Okay, we'll call it welcome label. Welcome label. Yay. It's a UI label. It's an outlet, and it's a weak connection. I'm going to connect it. There we go. Now that I have a reference to it here, so I want to set it, right? So every time I switch, let's just bring this up here in my, no, I'll kill this part, and I'll bring up this part so you can see it live here. There we go. So every time I switch, I want to use this IB outlet, right, to change the text of my UI label to wherever I'm switching to. So I know I'm switching down in here. So notice that when I switch, I'm physically switching down in here, where I actually move to one of the other ones. So now, question for you: if I change it, does it already exist before the view did load function? That's the question. So if we trust that it does, then I'm going to change my label instantaneously. I'm going to say, well, self dot, right, dot text. So welcome label dot text, right? I want to say, well, and we're moving to which view? We're moving to from one view to the other. Am I doing it in the right place? I'm not. Shouldn't be done here. It's when I'm actually doing the moving, which is when I switch here. So after I instantiate it, I've instantiated the views. And before I move to my blue view, right, or my yellow view, so let's go here. So I've done the frame, and just before I switch my view, I want to set it up. So I'm going to say just here, my welcome label.text is equal to welcome to yellow, right? And then just because before I move to blue, I want to put it after the frame. Hold on a second. I'll fix that in a second. And I'll say, welcome to blue. Now, let me see what this does. It says 3 consecutive statements. What's this error? It says consecutive statements on a line must be separated by yeah, you know, that's really good, Tom. That was excellent. That was fantastic. I know what I wanted to do. All right, cool. So let's see if this works, right? So builds. Now we have to make a change to GitHub. You killed me, man. Look what you did, right? And I'll build it. And let's see if it works from the first. The first one will tell us right away if it's going to work, right? Oh, man. It says label. Well, hold on. We didn't get here from that switch fuse. We got here from the view did load. So what happens if I click this the first time? Will it work? Well, it did work, but we didn't make enough room for it. So what I got to do is a couple changes, right, to make it work. One, in the storyboard, I need to make room for it up here. So I want to make it so that it takes up the entire, just to be safe, the entire view. And you know what? We may want to add some constraints, right? Because it's taking up the entire space. And maybe we want to make it centered, you know, all that kind of stuff. Make it centered and it's placed there. If I make it so it goes all the way to the edge, like edge to edge, that might be a safe thing to do because then I can go 0 and 0. So it'll stretch to fit whatever I'm putting in there, just like we did with the other one. So I'm going to put a couple of constraints in there. So I'm going to say, well, I want to make sure it's definitely these ones. That's for sure. What about the top constraint? I want to put that constraint to 0 as well. I'm not quite 0 here, but it's okay. And then add 3 constraints. All right. So it's kind of taking up that whole space. Look what it did. My label is like massive, right? Let's undo that change. So let's try that again. So I want to kind of add my suggested constraints. Now you got to be careful here because what's the other hotkey for it? Command Option Shift equals, right? Command Option Shift equals, right? And it does the same thing. See what it did? Made it massive, right? Undo. So what else can I do? Well, I definitely can do some of those constraint things. I can kind of do one of these. So I can say to safe area, right? And I want to do one of these to the bottom so it connects to this one. So I can kind of control drag this one all the way to this. So there's some vertical spacing in there. And it says that I have a couple of ambiguous layouts, right? So let's see if I go to my editor. I love this one. And for my selected view, I want to add any missing constraints. And did it do it again? It did. Undo. I don't want to add missing constraints. I want to fix my problem. And how about update frames? Okay, let's see what it does. May not solve my problem, but maybe it's good enough for me, right? Maybe just to make it interesting, also make the font size a little bigger because you know it's not that good. And make it bold. And we know we're going to be on white and yellow, so maybe you want to make that even a different color when you switch over. For me, I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave it like that, and then run this thing finally because you asked. Okay, that was the first problem. The second problem is when we go there the first time, oh man, what the heck? Oh man, what the heck? Right? Oh, wait. Welcome to blue. It did that, but I just messed up the constraints. Let's go back up. And we're going to remove all the constraints again. So we're going to say that editor, I'm going to clear my constraints. I'm gonna go back down to this one and add them back in the way they were, which is boom, boom, boom. Add my 3 constraints in there. What the hell did it do that for now? Kind of took up that entire space. And because you know why? Because I have that other thing in there now. Yeah. What the hell is it doing now? Redo, 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 redo. And yeah, I want to, that's messed up, eh? Right, so about that? And move on from there. I'm not going to continue going with this stuff. This is just an example. But how do I fix this problem? Well, this problem is coming from from a coding perspective. If I look at my switching view controller, remember that I'm going there for the first time here. Before I do this frame, I also want to do the same thing. So I want to say self._welcome message, right? So I'm going to go my welcome label. I didn't call it underscore. Welcome label dot text is equal to, again, we know we're going to blue. That's what it's going right now. So we're going to change it to welcome to blue, right? Which is kind of the same thing. Right, and now that should fix most of our problems other than our lovely constraints, which we're going to hit next week again. Welcome to blue. Oh, and kind of have everything working, but not exactly as I'd like. Is that kind of messed up? Are we good? But that's messed up. I really don't like the way that worked just now. So anyways, I'll put it up on GitHub. It'll be another commit, and then you have the idea behind it. That's the idea behind it. Okay, so I'm going to go to source control. I'm going to commit. I'm going to say added welcome label to super view, which is what I did, right? I'm going to push this to the origin master and commit all 3 files. And it's going to move over there. Thank you, guys. That's it for me for today. Let's spend some time working on that pizza app for the last hour.